A $2 million supercar sat in a repossession lot declared beyond saving by the very company that assembled it, and the reason it couldn't move came down to a $3 fuse from a retail parts store. That's not a punchline. That's what Mat Armstrong documented when he bought a broken Bugatti Veyron and started pulling at threads the manufacturer had no interest in helping him follow. Mat Armstrong didn't arrive at the Veyron as a lifelong Bugatti admirer. The former professional BMX rider from Leicester made his name in the automotive world by doing what franchised dealer networks declare impossible, working through wrecked supercars that authorized workshops turn away entirely. His earlier Chiron Persport rebuild already placed him in a documented confrontation with Bugatti's senior leadership after he repaired a car their own CEO stated could only be serviced at the factory in Molsheim, France. That project found its solutions in resourcefulness. Audi A3 airbags sourced for £50 apiece, fabricated radiators, and months of problem-solving for which no official service manual had ever been written. When the Veyron arrived in April 2026 from a repossession company, it looked like a simpler proposition. A gearbox fault had generated a repair estimate between $300,000 and $350,000, and the previous owner had decided that handing the car over made more financial sense than covering the bill. Mat bought it for well below the market rate for a functioning Veyron, assessed the clean exterior, the intact interior, and an engine that fired without argument, and decided that estimate deserved investigating from the ground up. What he found inside the gearbox wiring would go on to publicly embarrass one of the most expensive automobile manufacturers in existence. The gearbox refused to engage any gear. Pushing the selector to drive produced nothing, the car locked in park with no apparent path forward, and every symptom pointed toward catastrophic gearbox failure, which was the exact conclusion behind the $350,000 estimate, and the reason the vehicle had ended up in repossession in the first place. Mat worked through the electrical system and found a blown fuse, specifically the fuse assigned to the hydraulic gearbox pump, which fires every time a door opens to prime the system and maintain 55 bar of pressure through the drivetrain's hydraulic circuits. No fuse means no pump. No pump means no hydraulic pressure. No pressure means no gear engagement. And no gear engagement means the car goes nowhere at all. He drove to Halfords and came back with a replacement fuse for roughly $3, fitted it, the pump rebuilt system pressure, and the Veyron engaged drive without a sound of protest. A sports car sitting beneath a $350,000 repair bill had been made drivable for less than the price of a single cup of coffee. A blown fuse doesn't fail by itself, and whatever was pulling excess current through that circuit remained inside the car waiting to produce the same result again. Heat damage along the wiring near the hydraulic pump connector turned out to be the root cause. The plastic housing baked brittle until it began breaking apart. Cross-referencing the pump against original equipment manufacturer data produced a result that Bugatti's parts pricing didn't prepare anyone for. That pump is mechanically identical to the unit operating the roof mechanism on an Audi A6 all-road, sitting within the broader Volkswagen Group family of components. Bugatti lists the assembly at $3,615. Mat sourced the same motor for €268, ordered 2 units, swapped the wiring connectors, and completed the repair. The gearbox accumulators storing hydraulic pressure between pump cycles turned out to be the same components fitted to the Volkswagen Lupo, and 2 of them from Bugatti cost $1,235, while the Volkswagen equivalent ran $200 total. NGK spark plugs mapped directly through Volkswagen part numbers. Underneath $2 million of price tag and manufacturer exclusivity, the Veyron shares a substantial portion of its mechanical components with mainstream production cars across the Volkswagen Group's range, and every one of those components sits in a supply chain accessible to anyone willing to look up the numbers. That shared parts reality becomes hardest to ignore when set against Bugatti's official annual service cost for the automobile. Bugatti specifies a full fluid change once per year, requiring drainage through 16 separate plugs spread across the crankcase, the gearbox housing, and auxiliary tanks distributed throughout the car, most of them reachable only after the rear wheels, rear brakes, and rear fender liners come off. Each plug drained and refitted and torqued in a precise sequence with the engine running between stages. The quoted cost from an authorized facility runs around $27,000. The synthetic 10W60 oil costs approximately $35 per quart, and the Veyron holds 16 quarts, while each official oil filter is priced at $1,000 and can only be ordered directly from Bugatti. Mat sourced every compatible component through the Volkswagen supply chain, enlisted Bugatti specialist Simon Furlonger to bring in an official oil filter through legitimate trade channels, and completed the entire annual service for $1,193.83. He put both numbers on camera without commentary, and the gap between them made the argument without any assistance from the narrator. The engine misfire traced to cylinder 16 and spread intermittently across the left bank of the W16, a 16-cylinder quad-turbocharged unit running ion-sensing combustion management that reads combustion quality through the spark plugs, with individual ion-sensing modules reported at $9,000 each. Mat swapped coil packs and spark plugs between the left and right banks systematically, trying to locate whether the fault sat in the ignition hardware, the plugs themselves, or the ion-sensing computers interpreting combustion data for the engine management system. A smoke test caught a pinhole radiator leak from a stone strike, and repairing it through official procedure requires stripping the entire front end of the car, including wings, headlights, and the front suspension frame. Rad weld stop leak went through the system at operating temperature instead, the compound bonding at the leak point and sealing it in place, which Bugatti purists would have dismissed and Mat had no practical alternative to accepting. Getting Bugatti to respond about parts was where the ownership experience revealed its structural problem most plainly. Calls to Bugatti London went unanswered across both the service centre and the parts department. Bugatti Paris returned an automated message directing callers to ring back on weekdays. Multiple extensions at dealerships across the country connected to voicemails that nobody returned, hold systems that never resolved, and phone trees that seemed engineered to prevent anyone with an existing problem from reaching anyone capable of addressing it. The sales line, by contrast, answered on the first attempt and called back within minutes. Mat named that contrast directly on camera, then dialed Pagani Manchester as a live comparison. Pagani answered immediately. When Bugatti Manchester finally called back on a Tuesday, the fuel pump control module isolated through live diagnostics as the source of the starting fault was confirmed in Molsheim stock at £45,000, with the car required to travel to Bugatti for installation and no provision for releasing the part to anyone outside the authorized network. Searching that part number online surfaced a Bugatti recall covering 72 Veyrons, requiring the fuel tank control unit to be replaced with an upgraded version running software v3.03. Mat's car already had v3.03 installed, which meant the recalled replacement had been fitted at some point in the car's documented history and had failed regardless. On camera, the case for Bugatti covering the replacement at no cost looked reasonable given that paper trail, though whether Bugatti would reach the same conclusion remained something only the facility visit could resolve. A DIPS electronics specialist opened the module and found a cold solder joint on pin 7 of the right-hand connector, the pad lifted from repeated heating and cooling cycles, generating exactly the intermittent fault Mat had been chasing for months, the module operational sometimes and failing unpredictably depending on where the joint happened to sit. Reflowing the solder brought the car back briefly, then it stopped again, and the £45,000 module was ordered. With that situation resolved as far as it could be before the Bugatti visit, Mat restored the bodywork, replaced damaged trim components, and replaced the original light blue exterior accents with satin metallic silver. Working alongside an auto locksmith, he built a functional replica of the speed key, the device inserted beside the driver's seat that initiates the system check before the Veyron releases its full performance envelope. Tire pressures must pass specification before the mode will engage, and once they do, front ride height drops from 125mm to 65, the rear wing angles to 2 degrees, front diffuser vanes close, and the steering radius tightens, reshaping the car's aerodynamic and suspension geometry for continuous running above 380 km/h. The speed at which further drag reduction becomes the margin between reaching the number and falling short. Without the key inserted, the automobile holds at 213 mph electronically, regardless of what the engine can produce. Clearing the car for a runway top speed attempt required sorting a blown indicator fuse, addressing the recurring misfire that kept setting off dashboard warnings, and resolving a tire pressure monitoring fault threatening to block top speed mode entirely. After hours of diagnosis, every warning light cleared. The homemade speed key went into position. Top speed mode engaged and confirmed its readiness. The Veyron then ran for over 150 miles to the airstrip without a single fault appearing, and lost power at the track itself, shutting down without warning and refusing to restart cleanly, with diagnostics pointing back to a communication fault from the same fuel pump control module. A car that had run cleanly for months across hundreds of miles chose the highest visibility possible moment to confirm that problems on a Veyron don't stay solved just because they've been worked through once. The W16 engine underneath all of this, the quad-turbocharged 8-litre unit Ferdinand Piëch sketched on a train between Tokyo and Nagoya in the early planning stages, produced 987 horsepower at its 2005 launch and required 10 separate radiators to survive its own heat output during development, with Bugatti building a dedicated test bench just to run it. All 450 production Veyrons were hand-assembled in Molsheim between 2005 and 2015, and the Supersport variant eventually pushed the top speed record to 431 km/h. Engine replacement through official channels carries a price above $850,000. The dual-clutch transmission is listed at $185,000, notably below the $350,000 figure attached to Mat's car before anyone looked at the fuse box. What the Veyron project put on public record across months of openly documented engineering work is that supercar ownership runs on 2 parallel financial tracks simultaneously. The official one, where parts carry manufacturer-controlled pricing, service demands factory authorization, and routine maintenance accumulates past $100,000 every 2 years before anything actually breaks. And the mechanical reality underneath, where Audi A6 pump motors and Volkswagen Lupo accumulators and NGK spark plugs share part numbers with the world's most expensive production automobile, sitting in a catalogue accessible to anyone with an internet connection and enough patience to search.